The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
TV party tonight! TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes.
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my tickets!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson at Blurnsville.
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast.
Not evening.
TV party to Jackasses Are Us, otherwise known as TV Party Tonight. I'm losing my patience. Your host, Mr. Mark, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And over there is my hetero life mate and brother from another mother, my tag team partner, the axe to my smash, the hawk to my animal, ladies and gentlemen, making his afternoon debut on TV Party on a show he didn't want to be on. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody's working for the weekend. He's just Robert Winfree.
Which of us is the hot tag guy? I feel like it's me only because you generate sympathy. Like you can take. Like,
yeah, I take the beating.
You take the heat. I come in for the save.
Yeah, I feel like even though this isn't really like our body shapes as such, it's like I'm the worker. Like I get in there, I take the bumps and everything, and then I tag you, and you're like 6 feet tall and immobile, but like boom, and like you hit a guy and he falls down and out of the ring, that kind of a thing. We're like Shawn Michaels and Diesel. We're the two dudes with attitudes.
Appreciate you turning me into Kevin Nash for the sake of this discussion.
You're welcome. Who? I guess that makes you Jim the Anvil if I'm Brett the Hitman.
Yeah, that's where it falls. Like that's one that doesn't have an appropriate analog for how this works between.
Yeah.
Because I say that only because we're a little bit more like if they ever had a face run, Edge and Randy Orton.
I think we work better as heels anyway.
I'm with you there. Well, look, you're Randy in that you're fairly expressive and always hurt. And I'm Edge. It took me a long time to actually get my due, and then I spent the entire time. I only got famous for feuding with John Cena. Not sure who Cena is in this equation, but
that's fair. All right. So Robert is here against his will. This is the first ever like hostage cast.
This is not. We've done this before.
Oh, sorry. This is yet another hostage cast.
Another installment.
We're here. So here's what we're actually doing, so people get it. We're talking about The Idol. The Idol is an American drama television series created by Sam Levinson.
Oh, wait.
The Weeknd.
You have to put air quotes around drama. It's an alleged drama.
The Idol is an exercise in frustration created by Sam Levinson, The Weeknd, and Reza Fahim. It focuses on pop idol Jocelyn, played by Eli Roth, Depp, and her complex relationship with Tedros, who is The Weeknd, a sleazy nightclub owner, self-help guru, and cult leader. Appearing in supporting roles are Suzanna Son, Troye Sivan, Jane Addams, Jennie Ruby Jane, Rachel Sennott, Harry Neff, Moses Sumney, Divine Joy Randolph, Eli Roth, Ramsey, and Hank Azaria. The Idol Hank, I know that you're this great actor and you used to be on The Simpsons, but what if we gave you this part in The Idol?
Hang on, he's still on The Simpsons.
The Idol premiered its first 2 episodes at the 76th Cannes Film Festival in May 2023, and it aired on HBO and Max starting June 4th, and it received negative reviews from critics. The synopsis is as follows. Eli Roth Depp Jocelyn is a pop idol who resolves to reclaim her title as the sexiest pop star in the U.S. after her last tour was canceled following a nervous breakdown, like we all have. She begins a complex relationship with Tedros, who is The Weeknd, a self-help guru and the head of a contemporary cult.
It's not complex.
It's not in any way, shape, or form. So Robert's going to give his take on this. Let me give my testimony, and then Robert can give his. So couple of things. One, a little ways back, I stopped doing TV Party by and large because I could not keep up with the sludge that was coming from Marvel,
Everywhere.
Marvel, DC, Star Wars. I just, there was too much pop culture sludge, and a lot of it was terrible. And I think like between Obi-Wan Kenobi, Halo, and a couple of other things, I'm like, I just don't want to spend my life talking about things I don't care about anymore, trying to pull conversation out of my ass. I came back to TV Party, but in a limited capacity, based entirely on things I actually want to talk about, or shows other people want to talk about with me. And nobody wants to talk about the morass with me. I mean about it. So that's what we have Alexis for. But my friends still enjoy my company, and so we'll still talk about things like Ted Lasso or the David Simon stuff I do with Jesse, which will be next week. We're doing Show Me a Hero, or any like the sci-fi stuff, Star Trek stuff that I do with David, and most recently the Muppets. So I'm still doing TV Party in limited.
Ooh, Muppets.
I even still do stuff with Alexis. You know, Alexis and I will typically pick an encapsulated mini series of some kind. We did the Dahmer, we did me and Jesse did Pam and Tommy, Welcome to Chippendales. And so in that vein, it's where I'm going with this. Like, if there's stuff that's on a subject matter that I'm interested in, or there's a controversy around it, it's why I did the She-Hulk show last year. There's something to talk about. I'm willing to
that's why.
and talk about it. And the Idol, in its media push, was pushed as this thing that, like, oh my god, it's the most lurid, most like, it was described as sexual torture porn.
It can certainly be used for enhanced interrogation. I'll give you that.
Yeah. So, and then like there was a whole, we're going to talk about this in a little bit. There was a bunch of behind the scenes controversies, and I was like, oh, this would be really interesting to dig into. And I kind of turned to my my Hall of Justice, you know, my podcast buddies. And
let me hang on. Let me take over here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I look to my friends to say, who will talk about this show with me? Robert.
So for a couple of weeks, Mark had been finding news articles from the trades, those useless rags.
Yeah.
That were like, hey, the Idol, it's a thing. And Mark went, ooh, I like things. And because it started gaining some traction, because Mark and I have described ourselves, not necessarily described each other, we have described ourselves thusly. Mark has accused me, not without merit, of being a bit of a snob, of walking through the orchard of cinema and entertainment, and I will take from any tree. I am not a snob in the sense that I think something has to be about a certain subject matter or fall into a certain genre, but from each genre, from each tree, from each whatever, I tend to look for things that are the best. I tend to look for the things that I enjoy.
The most succulent fruit.
And this is, again, it's not wholly inaccurate. Mark is a truffle pig.
That is one step above Trash Panda. Thank you.
Well, look, you're willing to wade through the mountains of crap in the hope that you find amongst them something worthwhile.
Sure.
And this is some of just kind of our disparate personalities as far as that goes. So Mark saw, ooh, a new pile of crap. I wish to engage with this and see if there's anything in here worth talking about. Someone take this journey with me. And he put this out, and he received crickets.
I believe it was everyone took a giant step back, and Robert was eating a fresh plum, going, "Oh, fuck a duck. I'm alone."
So Mark said, someone talk about this with me, and no one wanted to. Everyone kind of went, yeah, I don't think so. And he gave it a day or two, and then more stuff about it came out, and it was just like, ooh, all this behind the scenes stuff about it's an unfettered orgy and uncontrollable nonsense. And he said, please, this is my Waterloo. It's right around, it starts airing on my birthday. Someone give me this gift. Someone do me the birthday honor of talking about this thing with me on a podcast. And I allowed him to guilt me into this.
Such as our abusive relationship.
Look, I couldn't let you be sad about this.
I appreciate that.
So I said, fine. Mark, I have walked into the gates of hell with you before, and shall do so again. They know our names there at this point.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you do again, eh?
I said I will do this. And such is the nature of this show, this is the last time I will allow Mark to guilt me into anything.
Okay. Wow. So the other thing about Robert and I, and we'll go right into the craft review. We are known. I mean, we just did 3 hours on Oppenheimer. Now, granted, it wasn't a 3-hour craft review, and there was an element that was also dealing with Barbie, and the whole Barbenheimer experience. You know, on the occasion we go the flat 3 hours. It's not always like a Northman experience where it's just me and him. We just can't get out of each other's arms. That was more of there was a lot to talk about, and we needed the full 3 hours to talk about it. But Robert and I just getting together to talk about anything like easily hit 2 hours.
There's a chance.
We are starting now, almost right now, going to do something very un-Robert and Mark. We are going to attempt an entire craft review in 10 minutes or less, because the show, there's more to talk about with this show outside of the show itself, outside of the craft of this show, than there is the actual craft. So while this entire podcast will definitely be a little over 30 minutes, I think, starting now, here's what needs to be said about this show. Basically, there really is no plot as such.
Nope.
Stuff happens kinda in the sense that stuff happens in my life, stuff happens in Robert's life, stuff happens in everyone's life, but no one would ascribe a plot to our lives. We are just living them. And this is one of those almost like reality TV kind of setups to where there is a window to the outside world that we can all look in to see what goes on between Lily Rose Depp and The Weeknd for 5 hours-ish. And then the camera goes away. And in that 5 hours that we get to look into their lives, we see them interact, we see them do stuff, but it would be a misnomer to say there is a plot to this show.
There is no semblance of structure.
No, there really is. I mean,
I wish I could remember it. I wish I could remember the whole quote.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bit from Addams Family Values where Wednesday at a summer camp, you have to watch the whole movie to get the context.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to get her to be engaged in this stupid play that's going on. And one of the camp counselors is very obviously sending up like writers and directors in Hollywood by having, don't you want to help me realize my vision? And her response is just like, your writing is puerile. This is under dramatized, overly choreographed. You lack all sense of Aristotelian structure and logic to your product.
Actually,
and
remember
it's
that
just
line.
the best.
So essentially, Lily Rose Depp's mother died, and in doing so, so this is like in the middle of either like the promotion for or the actual tour that she goes on, and coming out of that, she is trying to get back on top again, but she essentially has writer's block. What she is doing is it's a satire of how the pop industry works. If you think about like boy bands and stuff like that, it's very much like,
well, hang on. This is as close as we're ever going to get to like a pseudo apology to Britney Spears.
Yeah.
It's kind of how this goes.
Yeah. So it's essentially like we bring in writers, we bring in craft people to create your image, create your art, create your entire presentation, and then you go out and do it lobster. She meets The Weeknd, and The Weeknd, being a classic narcissist, I mean, like right out of the DSM-4, tries to isolate her, gaslight her, do all of this stuff, but also tries to like control her. And the one use that he has is he is somewhat a muse. He sort of breaks her out of the spell of, or depressive spell of, needing the rigmarole to become a pop star. It's like somewhere in you is actual talent. Let that talent out. Be who you really are inside. Stop worrying about your image. Stop worrying about what your hangers-on are telling you. Just be your most authentic self. That is where The Weeknd is useful. Where he is not useful is, but do everything through me because I want to control you. She eventually figures that out, does away with him, does exactly what he said to do, becomes the biggest star in the history of everything, and then having realized that she no longer needs this man, that she is her own true self, she is a spectacular, stunning, and brave human being, turns around and decides to have a loving relationship with him anyway, and the show ends. That is this whole fucking show, Robert. And number one, saying that sentence out loud made my brain hurt, and the inactive tumor that Hollywood is causing me to radiate.
We're slowly moving from benign to
malignant. Yeah, I want to talk about the whole draw to this show in just a second, but we need to kind of deal with just that much of it, and I want to give you a chance to respond. This is beyond dumb. Again, I can appreciate the message of be your own most authentic self. Process the trauma of your mother dying. Process the trauma of having grown up abused by this person. Use that to relate and be resonant with your audience, which does happen, and you will blossom into something. It's kind of like the VH1 movie about Def Leppard, where it's like, hey, if you would only use your actual voice and push yourself, you will create this sound that will resonate with your audience, and you're going to blow up bigger than you could ever dream. And they do, and they record Photograph, as how the story goes. Kind of the same thing here. If you would just deal with some of this stuff and be your own true self, people will see you, you will see them, and you will rise to stardom.
Oh no, Mark, the message is every abuser in your life is really doing it for your benefit.
Okay, so I'm going to shut up. Go ahead.
This is one of the worst things I've ever watched. And I don't say that lightly. The acting, to the extent that it exists, is either comically overdone or non-existent.
Yeah.
The Weeknd might be one of the most profoundly bad actors I've ever seen in my life. To the extent that he works, it's based on a degree of screen presence, not acting.
The Weeknd performs like he's watched actors act and he's imitating actors. And I don't mean a specific actor. He just watched a bunch of movies and decided that's what acting was, and then tried to do that.
And the director just didn't have it in him to fight with him over it.
Yeah.
Again, Lily Rose Depp is... Everything she does in this show is at an 11. If she's sad at an 11. If she's whiny at an 11. If she's mopey at an 11.
Yeah.
There's no sense of scale and range to the character.
She's like a loud dress.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
She's obviously off-putting and noticeable, but flat at the same. I don't know how you pull off what you're saying, where everything's at an 11, where you're shrill and flat at the same time, but somehow, and all credit in the world to Lily Rose Depp, you accomplished the impossible. How are you shrill and flat at the same time?
You managed to both suck and blow at the same time. Good job.
Yeah, congratulations, Lily Rose Depp.
The entire structure. When I say structure, I don't mean the act structure of this show, because that doesn't exist. The layout of individual episodes is mind-bogglingly bad.
Yeah.
Everything is overdone. Everything is overstretched. There are giant gaps of silence and nothing designed to extend runtime and theoretically add gravitas that are just boring and pointless.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing. This show isn't smart enough to be the satire it kind of wants to be. To the extent that it satirizes Hollywood and the pop industry, it's unintentional. It doesn't realize how dumb it is. It is kind of the way that I think about this.
Yeah.
And
this is my remark about the smartest stripper in the room.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. I don't say this very often, but this is not about art. This shouldn't exist. I'm not one of these people who generally does the you have to justify your own existence things to entertainment media. It's because it's such a weird it's a weird line usually said by people who are just unhappy with the product and can't express it in a better way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the Marvel shouldn't exist because I hate girls. That's not what we're saying.
What I'm saying about this shouldn't exist is there's not a single redeeming quality to this. There is no acting that is worthwhile. There is no set design that is worthwhile. There is no story that is worthwhile.
I haven't seen anything try to be sexy and beige at the same time. This is you know how like in dietary
No.
terms,
I got you. There's no color to this thing.
But this is like it's like but for our audience, I want to say what do you mean by beige? Well, literally both and figuratively. It's like somebody took a plate of food and like it's like, oh, it's all white food. It's potatoes and it's all like non-organic stuff. It's just, you know, it's all white food. It's all garbage. But it's also monotone. It's one color. That's the show. There's some weird lighting that happens in this show. Like there's a lot of shadow, but
everything. Anytime there's one of these. Oh, and by the way, the god awful attempts at sex scenes.
Hang on, that is a whole topic.
I have to say it as a negative.
Okay, we have to double back though because that is a topic in and of itself. And there's a way I wanted to handle it. So, like sticking with purely non-sex craft stuff, this is a very beige show. The sets are. Okay, so when I worked in porn, hang on, I wrote marketing. For Extreme Associates, but I was there on shoots when we weren't shooting them in the professional wrestling ring. I don't know. And we would just like rent houses, you know, just like in the Northridge Valley area. Just
if you happen to live in that area, everybody, there's a decent chance.
Yeah, more than decent. Like that's how people make a live, and some people make a living in California. They allow porn to be shot in their house. Okay, and so a lot of the porn you may have watched took place in just some dude's home. And that's kind of how this show looks. Like they didn't build a set or fight. So I'm watching The Offer on Paramount Plus, and they're doing like location scouting for different parts of The Godfather, and they're finding interesting houses or, you know, landscapes, things like that to shoot what would become this masterpiece of a movie. Then there's the Idol, which looked like they just called their porn director friend and be like, hey, do you have a house that's no one's using right now to shoot this at? Yep. It is thoroughly uninteresting. So there's like this really poor use of shadow. Everything is beige. And I don't mind a good talkie show. Like I loved Watchmen. Like we don't need to get into a fight over that. I liked Watchmen. Pick a show you like that was talkie. But like to me, Watchmen had interesting costumes. Watchmen had interesting locations. It had great performances. It had great performers. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the themes. It's one of my favorite shows of that year. This is like the polar opposite, where it's talky, but it's literally like we just spent 3 hours on Oppenheimer and then another hour on Barbie. You can do talky, but you have to be doing things with the actors to make you watching them talk interesting. You have to shoot them like Frost Nixon would be a really good example of a very talky movie where they're doing interesting things with the camera to make the talking interesting if the talking in and of itself isn't interesting to you in particular. This is literally like watching the Real Housewives of New Jersey. It's a wide angle shot of people talking in a circle for what seems interminable. You think their podcasts are long? Check out an hour episode of The Idol of 4 or 5 people standing in a circle talking, and you don't even get like Aaron Sorkin level dialogue.
No, they're talking, and it's the most puerile,
yeah,
self-indulgent, whiny. It becomes imminently clear after spending 2 minutes with any of these characters why they're so easily seduced into a cult by the least useful cult leader in human history,
or charismatic. Let me tell you something, folks. There's a joke going around about my podcast about like this isn't really a podcast network; it's a cult. Look, I'm not exactly, a model here, but I have a certain bit of charisma. People enjoy my company and being around me, which is more than I could say about the fucking Weeknd, at least in this show.
It's terrible, and how do I phrase this? Originally, this was supposed to be 6 episodes.
I feel like when they were cutting up footage, like the editor just shot himself. Like, I can't do this anymore.
They probably went through a couple.
We keep losing editors.
And I half wonder, when you look at how this ends, were they thinking they might get a second season out of it? Like, there's no reason for this to end the way it does if this is supposed to be the actual end of your theoretical story. No reason for this.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
I have not heard anything about any more seasons.
No, it's not getting any more. I said, my question was, do you think they thought they'd get, like, everything gets at least 2, right?
I mean, so Jason and I last year did Winning Time, and we thought it was a mini series, and it's in its second season right now. When stuff is developed, it's usually developed for at least 1 season, and then they'll see how it goes, and they end it unless they're promised more seasons right from the get-go, they wrap up that. Look, the first season of The Wire ends. It just ends. Like they've solved the case. Everyone but Stringer goes to fucking prison. Like, it's done. If they never come back again,
and McNulty's
we're good.
Stuck on a boat, we know.
Yeah, and McNulty's stuck on a boat. Like, we're good here. We did the first season of Treme not that long ago. You could have very easily stopped with 1 season of Treme. The fact that they come back for second and third seasons because the show is doing well or there's interest or whatever, they just write new stories. I have to imagine they went in. First of all, this show comes across like it was, we talk about this with movies right now, where they're reshooting things and they're changing things based on feedback or whatever.
Yeah.
To where the entire movie.
Look, we kind of refer to it derogatorily as scrapbooking. Like, if we shoot enough different stuff, we can cobble it together into something that people like.
I have a funny feeling whatever the intention was for this show changed by the time it made air. Like, right up, I think it was like locked and then sent to HBO and aired on June 2nd, like in that week. Because you're right, this almost feels like they were trying to cobble it together right up until June 2nd when it aired, or whenever it was, June 4th. This was on Sundays. All right, we've avoided this for this long. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me and all the good things that can be. Let's talk about sex. So,
the controversy around this show was largely drummed up by, it's so provocative. And
yeah. So we'll talk about the actual controversies in a minute, but let's talk about the sex in the show. And Robert's right. The big draw to the show is it's like the sexiest sex you'll ever sex on TV. Look, and this is coming from me, okay, who 2 minutes ago was like, I worked in porn. I have seen worse. This is one of the, I think I told you this in chat. If this is what people think is like lurid and sexy and too far, a bridge too far for television, when did this country become this puerile? This puritanical. Puritanical, yeah. When did we become this puritanical that this qualifies as too much? Like, dude, this is not even Skinamax sexy.
Yeah, like, you and I have both seen The Sopranos.
Well, you have, but I'll give you one better. I've Game of Thrones.
Sure. Like, yeah, there's any number of things that are much more into that. Like, this is a lot of awkward hip gyrations and allegedly Lily Rose Depp's chest.
That's what you want to call it.
That's why I said alleged.
We don't mean to body shame, but yeah, like, so I've watched plenty of R-rated, almost, NCAA, NC-17 television. And as I've certainly watched plenty of like Skinamax and, softcore porn and stuff like that, not to mention, everything else that qualifies as porn.
Once again, worked in porn.
It worked in porn. But just going off of what you can air on regular television, I saw more lurid shit in The Shield. That was on FX, on like regular cable television. I mean,
there's that whole episode where they're all banging strippers to try and find the one who's rolling johns.
I was thinking even about like Aceveda when he gives the guy the blowjob. Like,
yeah, there's some male on male sexual assault that goes on there.
Yeah, Oz would be.
Well, Oz is on HBO, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, well, so is this, and so if you want to draw a comparison,
Okay.
you know, that's like to like,
Well, I like, dude, Game of Thrones was on HBO. Like
right?
you already mentioned, Oz. There's a few things in The Sopranos. Like one of their cover things for The Sopranos is a strip club where the guys partake on occasion.
Well, The Deuce. The Deuce was 3 seasons about the rise of porn on in Midtown Manhattan. There's there were 1 or 2 sex scenes in The Deuce. Like so I'm watching this and like there's sex and then there's like sexy, and I don't think this is even qualified as either. This
No,
this was, I swear to God, now that I'm saying this out loud, the sex in The Idol, which is supposed to be too much and too far and and too lurid, comes across like some junior high boy's like fantasy of what he thinks sex is.
Yep.
This is in like I think about back when I was a kid, Sex Lies and Videotape. Remember that?
No, before my time.
Okay, but there were
Also Good Mormon Boy.
that you've seen stuff.
I don't pretend that I haven't.
So you don't get to hide behind Good Mormon Boy on our discussion of The Idol.
I do. Hang on. I do. As far as junior high goes, I sure get to.
Oh, okay, fair.
My 20s are a different story.
Okay, whenever you had your awakening and got to see stuff, I grew up neglected, so I got to see a whole bunch of stuff from like the age of 7 on up.
That explains a lot about you. Actually.
It really does, doesn't it?
Your dad just leaving his box of porn out in the corner for
all to see.
Single-digit Mark Radulich to put in a VHS tape.
Yeah, like surrender in paradise, you say. Anywho,
that's a pull.
True story. Can confirm. Anywho, the story of what's that, Dad? Anywho,
overhyped.
Let's go. Let's not get into a whole discussion of that. We said we were going to be quick about this. So just to kind of close out our discussion of the sex in this thing, so we can move on. Like, I have seen there's a way to shoot. Like, I'm thinking about like a Fatal Attraction, like some of the stuff with Glenn Close and Michael Douglas.
Well, or Basic Instinct, if you want to go slightly different.
Yeah,
they're both like the sexual acts and the resultant like emotional intensity that comes out of those two movies is kind of similar. I mean, different but similar.
Right. So, as a point of comparison, if people listening to this like, okay, but what are you saying? There is a way to shoot sex on TV and in film where you can give the audience the impression of sexiness, of sleekness, luridness. So Robert and I have to be careful how I say this because we are on YouTube. Robert and I have watched a lot of non-consensual film. Things like
it is a storytelling device. It is a I am of the opinion that's one of the worst things one human being can do to another, and I have a very low tolerance for it in real life.
Mm-hmm.
But as something that happens in narrative,
mm-hmm.
if you treat it with the respect and seriousness that it deserves,
mm-hmm.
it's a powerful storytelling tool. I mean,
so 2 examples.
Murder.
So Irreversible, right, is a movie that both Robert and I have watched, and the way the non-consensual sex in that is shot, this is a section in general, there's an art to it. It is absolutely a thing of tragic, horrible beauty. Another one, and I'm going to say this, and everyone's going to laugh because one, it's a kind of a joke thing. It's become a running gag on this network for a variety of reasons, but I'm bringing it up for a very specific reason. The non-consensual act scene in Nude Nuns with Big Guns is abjectly terrifying. It's shot and acted in a way that you get a visceral reaction to it. It's why I bring it up all the time. There is a scene in Nude Nuns with Big Guns that is almost like a departure from the rest of the movie, and it's horrifying, and its brutality and its and its performance, everything about it is, it gets you down to your core. And it's weird because it's like the B-est of B movies. It's a nunsploitation movie about drugs. Go figure. But it's this one scene really stands out. There's nothing like that in The Idol. Nothing. There's nothing about The Idol that either comes across as overtly sleazy. And I think it's almost like we've become so conservative
Well,
in our
hang on. Here's
Go ahead.
the issue isn't whether or not the country is more conservative in the values around this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is this is the boy who cried wolf. This is PR trying to break through the signal to break through the noise of the world.
Okay. So you
pay attention.
So you don't think like this is reaction so much as this was PR,
Yes.
and the PR doesn't match the product.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right.
You're
my
right.
take on it.
Then I have misspoken because I'm thinking like this is like the collective. No, I think the collective audience's reaction to this is like this was much ado about nothing.
Yeah, like if you look at the reaction to it, the reaction is not pearl clutching and going for the fainting couch.
Yeah.
People are not being freaked out by this. People aren't watching because it's bad. The whole bit about no, you have to watch it. This is the lurid, trashy must-watch event of the summer. It's bad PR, and shame on them for it.
You know what it reminds me? I think it was like Biloxi Blues, where it's either Biloxi Blues or the other one that preceded it, where they're making a big deal out of this like pornographic picture, and it's just a woman kind of doing one of these. You're like, oh, that was a lot of, but it was a big deal to them in the 50s or whatever the hell this takes place, the 40s.
Yeah.
But it's like not a big deal at all. Kind of the same thing here, where it's like, where you're right. I think there was a concerted effort to make this sound like we gotta grab eyeballs here.
They had to try and sell it somehow, so they
Yeah.
tried to sell it as sensationalist
Mm-hmm.
filth, and it turns out it's just bad filth.
So in conclusion, had
Nothing
I
of
known
value.
what I know now, I would have ignored this and almost told Robert we don't have to talk about this. This is dumb. I was told I was getting a $50 Kobe beef cheeseburger, and it was the talk of the town in this Manhattan restaurant, and it just tastes like an ordinary cheeseburger. In fact, less so.
So you went in, you paid your $50, and the waiter just slapped you.
True story. We went for the $50 cheeseburger, and they're like, well, we're all out of it, but we have Kobe steak if you want. I'm like, you can get Kobe steak anywhere. I came for like the big $50 cheeseburger you advertised that was all over, all over magazines and newspapers throughout Manhattan. I came for this thing. Like, well, we're out of it. Sorry. But here's the thing that everyone has. Great. I don't want this anymore. I'm gonna go get chicken from the place down the street. True story.
Go to the food cart down the way.
Yep. I'm gonna go get a hot dog.
Street
Robert,
tacos, baby.
All right. Before we transition into women, let's talk about your final thoughts on the craft of this show.
This is one of the most inept shows I've ever seen on every conceivable level. It is badly acted. It is badly shot. It is badly structured. It is badly scored. It has nothing of value to say. When I say this shouldn't exist, understand, I have not levied that particular bullet at a whole lot of stuff Mark and I have ever talked about. I've said stuff is really dumb. I've said I don't know why it exists beyond money. But that's it's a business. And when I say it doesn't exist beyond money, that's not me saying it shouldn't exist. Studios have to make money. This is a for-profit industry. When I say this shouldn't exist, I mean they took a giant pile of money, they took the time from everyone involved, and they created something with it that is so repugnant and so uninterestingly awful that its existence is an affront to humanity and what we should be doing with our time.
All right. Real quick, I'm gonna put this on screen. This isn't Damn You Hollywood, so I'm not doing like the full. I don't need to play the sound or anything. But I love my friend, and my friend and I like to do certain things together. Let's try that again. So, there we go. It's fun to look at Rotten Tomatoes. So
it is.
So it has an 18% on the tomato meter and a 41% audience score. And top critics, it drops it down to 16%. And the audience, it is what it is. But what I found really interesting about this...
Hang on. If you don't mind something amusing.
Yeah?
This is technically a better critical score than Secret Invasion.
Oh, God. Speaking of mud and morass, I don't want to deal with.
I'm just... Look, I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's accurate. I'm just saying.
So I was looking for
Critical
the
consensus about this.
I was looking for the reviews. Oh, there we go. Finally. Okay. So the Idol ironically never found its voice. I would agree with that. El Moreno, with Lily Rose Depp grounding the insanity of the story, we finally see why the show is so needed right now. Nothing has challenged Hollywood and celebrities quite like this.
You are giving this show way too much credit, sir.
Who are you trying to get a job with?
One, yes. Two, there's an assumption that this show is not being made in earnest. Like, there's a bit with, like, you know, that opening bit when, okay, who's her entourage? So you got the Jewish guy, and you got the fat best friend who's here to hype her up, and you got the gay best friend since childhood. There is something of an assumption going on with elements of the review of this that is, these people have to know this is satire. Like there's an assumption being made that, oh, everything about this is so unbearably stereotypical about what we perceive Hollywood to be that this has to be a satire. Nope. This is made in earnest. And when you realize that, everything falls apart.
Yeah. There's a couple more of these. Ryan Coleman of Slash Film. The Idol is sensational, messy, and amateur, and deeply worth watching.
I deeply regret having spent any time watching this.
No shit. I legit told Robert, because Robert had been harassing me about it, you know, and doing his usual passive aggressive stuff with me, and that's fine. That's our relationship. Like we fuck with each other, and I accept that. But there was definitely a part of me that was like, this isn't worth angry Robert. This isn't worth passive aggressive Robert. I'm willing to bail out of this. But that was also partially like me going, what the hell am I going to talk about here? Because it's such a nothing show. So like deeply worth watching. No, I'll tell you what. My big frustration with a lot of people now is not being able to admit when they're wrong or not being able to admit when they fucked up. Mark Radulich, absolutely fucked up. And here's how. I bought into the hype. I absolutely bought into the hype of this show. I was excited for it. I made it a big deal. This was my cocaine bear. And boy, did this not live up to its press. It did not live up to the marketing. I was absolutely snookered, and I actually feel bad for having dragged. It was like I fell into a bear trap, said, "Hey, Robert, free horror movies," and he went, "What?" and fell into the bear trap with me. I feel bad about that. All right. I don't need to share anymore. So the last thing I want to talk about, and imminently the more interesting thing about this show.
Well, hang on. As a brief aside, speaking of having to admit when you're wrong, tune in tomorrow to Damn You Hollywood. I have some crow to eat.
Yep.
Hey, look, man, I made my prediction. I was wrong. I have to own up to it. Fair enough.
All right. So I have an article here from The Wrap, and it is a timeline of the HBO series controversies. The series was blasted as sexual torture porn before dividing audiences at cons. And I just kind of want to go over some of this stuff.
If you feel so inclined.
So I guess April 2022, Amy Semites is out. Sam Levinson is in as director. In April 22, HBO said the show, which began filming in November of 2021, would be undergoing a massive rehaul with significant reshoots and several. This explains a lot.
Well,
and several new cast members.
You want my hunch about that?
Go ahead. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about it. Like, why not?
The Weeknd is one of the producers on this thing, right?
Yeah.
He couldn't get along with the director.
Reports came that director Amy Semites, who co-created The Girlfriend Experience, would be replaced by Levinson, who was producing the series and had tremendous success at HBO's with the boundary-pushing Euphoria. Several original...
Wait, this is the Euphoria guy?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that also explains a lot.
Yeah, real quick, Barry Levinson, or Sam Levinson, rather. Let's see. He did films, Operation Endgame, Another Happy Day, Assassination Nation, Malcolm and Marie, and Deep Water, which we reviewed on the show. He was a writer for it. Television. He wrote The Wizard of Lies, Euphoria. He was a producer on Irma Vep, and then he directed, wrote, produced, and created The Idol.
This is basically his directorial, like, serious debut.
Yeah.
Again, explains a lot.
It does really. So Anne Hesh used to be in this before she passed away. Elizabeth Berkley was cut entirely as they took a new creative direction. We can skip down. Rolling Stone runs a scathing article about how the once female-centric series has become torture porn. Several anonymous sources told the outlet that the show not only had production delays, costly reshoots, last-minute script rewrites, and a sense of chaos on set, but a toxic atmosphere. One production member told Rolling Stone it was like any rape fantasy that any toxic man would have in the show, and then the woman comes back for more because it makes her music better. Another called it sexual torture porn. Robert, was there any non-consensual stuff in this that you recall? Because I don't.
No.
Okay. Because I saw that, and that's part of like the intrigue for me. Was like, oh, like what happens in this show that we're going into the non-consensual area, and because the impression you get is that the Weeknd like tricks her into having sex with him, and I'm like, boy, that's not the impression. No, she had like hungry eyes for him from the moment she saw him, and when she was done with him, she like threw him out of the house. What did I miss here?
Look, is there a degree of manipulation going on with him? Yeah, but.
But that's like saying any relationship
has
that level of like now we're gonna call any sex between any male and female rape, because that's where we're going. I know that some people believe that, but it ain't true.
Yeah, that's kind of the point. Like, is it?
Sorry, my son just walked past me as I said that.
Yeah, that.
Like to get in on this discussion, Jonas?
I'm going to
run. Okay, run, save yourself.
So let me just say that there was
parenting,
dude. How was your childhood again? There's this notion that anything that isn't perfect, like this is one of the things that I'm really going to tread carefully here. The exposure of the abuses in Hollywood was a good thing.
Sure.
Like, so please understand, with what I'm about to say. The fact that the Me Too movement went too far in certain philosophical circles does not mean that the whole thing was not good, because
Agreed.
It was.
Sure.
But there was an undercurrent to it, especially the more it dragged on, that a lot of movements get when, if you actually affect the thing you have wanted to affect, if you wanted to affect change and you do get a little bit of change going, you do get the Harvey Weinsteins and some of the more abusive characters out of the equation. There's a bunch of people who are now really wrapped up in this, and they want to perpetuate it. This is how you get witch hunts. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there became a bit of a thought process in some of the Me Too stuff that was, Aziz Ansari was kind of the first one that when the story came out, everyone kind of went, wait, you had bad sex that you regret. You never said stop. You never withdrew consent. You just regret it. That's not his fault.
Yeah, this is a big thing that my wife, who's decidedly anti-feminist, which is hilarious, by the way, but like that's her thing, is like regret does not equal rape.
Yeah, and that's true, because women out there, I beg of you, on behalf of men, we're not mind readers. If you want to stop, you have to be clear. Now, there are still jackasses out there who won't accept that, and that's why you have criminal charges, and that's why you have all that other stuff.
I'm gonna take up the women's point of view on this. Women say they feel pressured. There was a whole thing. Oh gosh, something I was witness to recently. Oh, just a lot. Please don't go insane about this.
All right.
But a lot of the discussion coming out of the Barbie movie is women talking about they feel pressure from men. They don't speak up on that pressure. They give in to that pressure, but then they have to live with the regret of doing the thing they didn't want to do because they were afraid of the reaction, which sucks for guys because half of the guys will just say won't care and don't. And the other half deeply affected by the idea of like, oh, you didn't say no. I didn't realize that you felt that way. And I would have stopped if you said something. A lot of this goes down to like such a distinct inability to communicate.
Yeah,
between men
I was
and
going to
women.
say, like, as cliche as it is,
mm-hmm.
You have to communicate. You have to be, and
right.
When you're communicating with women, you have to be blunt.
Like, yeah, you really have to be concrete. But that goes both ways too. Women are not mind readers either.
Yeah.
you know, and it would be. And here's the thing: men are not taught to. We've talked about this with The Boys and some of the other things. Men are not taught to be vulnerable, so men don't always share how they really feel about something. But here's the thing that men think: if you're not really into this, neither am I. And it would be helpful if both people said, I'm not really into this. Oh, well, if you're not into this, then let's not do this. But that doesn't happen. You have the girl going, well, what if he beats me? And, you know, and then the guy going, she seemed like she was into it. And now nobody's satisfied. There's also this undercurrent sort of in, I guess they would call it fourth wave feminism. A thing that I have heard, any sex between a husband and a wife is rape, which is ludicrous. And
this is why no one takes fourth wave feminism seriously.
You know, shit. But it's also like why a lot of institutions are like crumbling at, you know, around, you know, the foundations are crumbling because you have people that believe those things and people that are perpetuating them. So all the way back to where we started with this.
This is a toxic relationship by any reasonable definition thereof. However, it's a consensual relationship.
Yeah, that's the thing. There was no non-consensual. If you're reading non-consent into this, that is you projecting your own insecurities and beliefs on it.
There's a lot of baggage you're carrying around that you need to address. It's not a theme in this. Look, does he seduce her in sort of the traditional sense of like enticement? Yeah, he does.
Yeah, because that's not a thing that happens between both men and women. You know, women don't lead men on either.
No, and I'm with you there. Like,
no, I'm not arguing with you, but like,
I know, and that's kind of the point. Like,
right?
If you look at this and read,
women don't promise in future fake with men at all. Come on,
I'm aware.
Get the fuck out of here.
I'm very aware.
Sorry, like some of this hits me
personally. Speaking of projecting, Mark, okay. My point here is, if you look at everything that happens in this show and your projection is the worst of sexual assault and violence, you are diminishing the horror of that act in some very real ways. This is just, if you want to use this as like a quasi teaching tool about how to avoid predatory behavior and people who look to manipulate and, again, leech off of you. Okay. Yeah. The Weeknd's character is a leech. Yes. He's not a rapist.
No. And
sorry.
And when we over categorize, when we lump things together that don't belong,
yeah.
When you start saying all food is fruit, then the word fruit loses all meaning.
Yeah.
Moving on. HBO strongly denied the accusation, saying the creative team has been committed to creating a safe, collaborative, and mutually respectful working environment. The Weeknd also dismissed the story as ridiculous and refuted the implication that these rapists are trying to make a rape fantasy. Depp also insisted that Rolling Stone's piece was off base, saying it's always a little sad and disheartening to see mean, false things said about you, about something you care about. It was not reflective at all of my experience shooting the show. And like, you could say like, okay, but you're covering your own ass. It's your show. Or she's being sincere. She was there.
Look, to the people who came out and said, no, this is like rape fantasy where she keeps coming back. No, this is a manipulative character manipulating another character.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's life. That's reality. That's not.
I mean, raise your hand if you've ever been manipulated by the opposite sex into believing something that isn't true.
Hang on. Yeah. I had to think about that for a minute.
Hey, how many assholes we got on this ship? Yo. Waiting for my son to dive in here. Anyway, moving on.
With his crossed eyes.
The Idol is praised and panned at Cannes, May 2023. The Idol had its world premiere at the Cannes Film Festival. Yeah, I'm going to pronounce it two different ways. Where the first two with the first two episodes played to a divided reaction. Although audiences gave it a 5-minute standing ovation. Yikes.
For the record, further proof that the standing ovation at Cannes means nothing.
Yep. Kyle Buchanan blasted it as 50 Shades of Tesfaye, a Pornhub homepage odyssey starring Lily Rose Depp's areolas and The Weeknd's greasy rat tail. I mean, accurate?
Not wrong. Not wrong.
I mean, in the most literal sense, that was an accurate statement, but it doesn't tell you a whole lot.
Well, neither does the actual episode.
True. Variety's Tatiana Siegel, however, promised Sam Levinson fans won't be disappointed. Critics gave it a resounding thumbs down. I mean, I don't need to read all of that. You get it. So that's that. I think I have heard some other stories about like some stuff on set, but I don't know. Have you? I don't know if anything else has like gravitated to your reading wheel about actual on-set problems.
Dude, my reading wheel has very little to do with the Hollywood trades.
Fair enough. All right. With that said, I think we have reached the end of our literal rope here with this show. It's always fun to talk. Stop it. It's always fun to talk to my friend. You know, I've been saying recently that I crave intellectual engagement, and the fact that you and I could take a pile of poop off the ground and throw it on a plate and stare at it and go, let's discuss it. And it's like for an hour. I think that's pretty impressive, and I certainly enjoy that. So sometimes we're a tag team, and sometimes we're Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle, or Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit, or whatever you want to throw in there. We got two guys working, and can put together a match without really thinking about it.
Let's go with Angle and Benoit, because one of us is a drug addict and the other has brain damage.
Accurate.
which is if you happen to be
left
in either
up to you.
If you happen to be in either of our personal orbits, oh, that's a dark joke.
All right, speaking of murdering your whole family, tonight myself and Jason and yourself, Jason Teasley and I will be talking Lake Placid, the four series of movies tonight. The series of 4 movies. That'll be later on Long Road to Ruin, a part 2 of our Anaconda versus Lake Placid series that we're doing. And because Jason and I like the silly. And then tomorrow night, myself and yours truly, plus Alexis Hannah, will be discussing the remake of Haunted Mansion.
Oof.
Yeah. Oof. I mean, it's not, I saw it Sunday. It's not bad. It's okay. It's one of those where I get, you got to make movies. You got to put movies in theaters. You got to try to make money, but it's one of those, you throw a pebble into the ocean, kind of deals where it's fine. We'll talk about it tomorrow night, in depth, but it's hard to, I see the point in releasing it in theaters, but there's a part of me that like, this should have gone straight to Disney Plus. But what money do you think this thing's going to make?
I tend to be of the opinion you shouldn't have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on this.
You're probably going to be of the opinion, where did that money go when you see it? But we'll talk about it tomorrow night.
Dude, you could have. I hate to be this guy. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're spending like half the GDP of Guatemala, I part of me can't help but go, you could have done something more useful with that money than this.
Indeed. Speaking of useful things, what are you doing these days?
Well, as you already mentioned, tomorrow we'll be talking about Haunted Mansion, so that'll be fun. I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling for 411mania.com. MLW stuff on Thursday, WWE SmackDown on Friday, and UFC events on Saturday. This Saturday, UFC 291 from my neck of the woods. They were back in Salt Lake. And we got another head kick knockout in the main event. So something about that venue and head kicks. There's another one earlier in the night, too. It was straight up head kick knockout. So was a decent enough night of fights. Like it lacked gravitas in the sense of like a lot of what took place didn't carry a lot of weight to it. But there were a whopping 2 decisions on that entire card. So you have that many finishes, like, I'm only going to complain so much. Yeah, Derek Lewis doing Derek Lewis things.
Yeah, I already took his pants off again.
Oh, do you want to know what he did? I will give you a recitation of events.
Sure.
So he wins in 33 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
He removes his pants,
as he is wont to do.
He does the DX crotch chop,
as he is wont to do.
He dances. He picks up his shorts and does a lap of the octagon, waving them over his head like the terrible towel.
That's awesome.
He removes his athletic cup and throws it into the crowd.
Gross.
He removes his gloves and throws them into the crowd.
Less gross.
To John Anik saying lots of souvenirs for the Mormons tonight. Derek Lewis puts his pants back on for the post-fight interview, where Joe Rogan asks him, "Did you plan to come out and throw a flying knee?" And Derek Lewis goes, "Hell nah. I came out and threw some bullshit, see if it landed. It did."
I love Derek Lewis. He has to be my favorite fighter.
No. He's then asked, "So did you plan beforehand to take your pants off in celebration of your, my balls was hot moment?" Hell nah. Joe Rogan, you know, sometimes your dickhead just got a mind of its own, man.
He's not wrong.
Then he tells his wife, "Honey, get ready. I'm coming home to rearrange some guts."
So plus or minus. Plus or minus, I'm going to get on top of my wife tonight, Brock Lesnar. Where do you rank Derek Lewis's post-fight coitus celebration?
Well, considering he also at one point called out Ronda Rousey. Like after he won a fight, he did the, "Hey, Ronda Rousey, where's your fine ass at?"
Awesome.
Derek Lewis is one of one, everybody. There's not another Derek Lewis. So anyway, there was that. If you want my full report of that, it's in the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. If you want another breakdown of that, as well as talk of boxing from the week, because it was a great week for boxing.
Oh my God, that Errol Spence Bud Crawford fight was the shit. Dude, Bud Crawford, pound for pound, #1 fighter in the world. Easily.
I cannot express how annoyed I was that I couldn't watch that live.
I turned my phone off.
Instead of watching that, I caught the last round and a half because that took place basically between the end of the co-main event and then the start of the main event. I can't tell you how much I so much rather would have been watching the magic of Bud Crawford instead of first a bit of Derek Lewis's stupidity and then the co-main event, which was kind of a nothing fight between Jan Blachowicz and Alex Pereira.
Let me tell you, if you were ever, when aliens come down, and apparently they're here amongst us, when aliens come down and they're like, "What does boxing look like?" Show them that fight. It was chef's kiss.
So yeah, I watched it after. I mean, that was the first thing I did when I got done with 291. Like that got wrapped. I posted my report and I went, okay, Crawford Spence must watch. But like you lose. I knew what happened. Like I had seen the ending because again I got the last round and a half before the stoppage. But I'd already seen people talking about like, boy, this is horribly one-sided, and oh, there's a knockdown. Oh, there's 2 more knockdowns. And I'd seen the discourse, and I don't blame people for it. Like I knew what I was getting into. I deeply regret watching Blachowicz and Pereira instead of Spence Crawford. There's nothing I could do about it.
I was mentioning this to my wife, like, the last Tank Davis fight, I had a girlfriend sit and watch with me, but I was engaged with her. I was watching the fight. I was on my phone.
Yeah, look, that wasn't that great a fight. I mean, my
point being that I tend to not focus on this stuff anymore. Like I've always got my phone going. I'm engaged with you guys in our MMA chat or whatever. I'm talking to a girlfriend. I've got people over. This was the first fight in months, if not a year or so, that I actually, because like the last time I focused on a fight, I was calling it. To where there was no other distractions, and I actually was watching the fight as it was happening, without blinking. This was the first time I was able to do that without calling the fight in God knows how long. And I'll tell you, I'll do it again. Like the next time I'm able to sit down and like watch a fight, I'm like putting my phone in another room, because I'll tell you, I have this habit now of letting myself get distracted, and then I miss stuff, and I can't really engage with the fight the way I want to. Because short of calling it, like when we did the third Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight, like that was a different experience and an enjoyable experience, but it's different from when you're able to just quietly and without distraction and without the noise just focus on the fight. And part of it was the fight itself. This could have gone badly. This could have been boring as shit. This could have been a Canelo Caleb Plant fight.
I don't know, man.
It's like, ugh.
Tell that to Bud. Bud, don't do that.
But no, this was the magic of boxing writ large. It was awesome.
Yeah. So I have a brief review of that fight, as well as from earlier in the week, Naoya Inoue becoming a 4-weight world champion when I feel bad that his performance is going to get eclipsed by Crawford because to be
my God, that fucking shot though.
Oh yeah. Like
that punch against Fulton, and you could see Fulton's soul come out.
Naoya Inoue, despite fighting now at 122 and starting his career at 108,
Mm-hmm.
He is pound for pound the hardest puncher in boxing.
Do you think he punches harder than Deontay Wilder?
Said pound for pound.
Okay.
But pound for pound, yes.
Okay. No,
His
but
delivery.
that was my question.
If you put Naoya Inoue and Deontay Wilder in similar frames, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he hits harder.
Okay. I'm not arguing with you. It was a legit question.
Again, like in real numbers, is Wilder punch harder because he's much larger.
Wilder was 12 feet tall. I'm not making that comparison.
No. Like that's not just for you. That's for like everyone in general. Like, well, what do you mean pound for pound hardest puncher? Like Deontay Wilder's 230 something most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's 6'4".
He's up there.
He's an enormous man, and bigger men carry more power. Inoue currently fighting at 122, but has the hands of a guy who's like a foot taller than he is. If you've ever seen Inoue's hands, they're huge.
Yeah, he's like Johnny Hendricks' hands.
And he just, again, for a guy his size to just flatten people the way he does.
Yeah, it's
like
a truck, man.
And not just that, like he outboxed Fulton, which was not something most people expected, but he did it.
Yep. To become a world champion in his heaviest weight class, in his 4th weight class, and to have gone up there and said, who's the best guy at 122? He could have picked a weaker opponent. He said, no, who's the best? Stephen Fulton Jr. Okay, that guy. I'm going to flatten him and prove it. That's a man for you. No, but
so
in the year of our Lord 2023, we're running short of men's men. You can find them. Inoue is one of them.
So if you want a full review of, again, some of the other Weeknd in
as opposed to Tyson
sports.
Fury, who is a disgrace.
Hang on. I'd much rather he fought Alexander Usyk, like by a mile.
Pee Wee Herman died.
Oh.
Yeah,
that's unfortunate.
Pat just posted that in our group chat.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap.
The Alamo has no basement.
Indeed.
So if you want a full breakdown of that, as well as stuff about the Bellator and Ryzen card that took place as well, I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. So again, this week is a review of 291, talk about boxing, and the other week of combat sports, and then a preview of the upcoming UFC and ESPN 50 card, which is all right. And then my soul leaves my body a little bit when I look at the card after that. I just go, oh no, not one of these again.
Okay.
The main event is fine. It's RDA and Vicente Luque.
Mm-hmm.
It's all downhill from there.
Gotcha.
It's all downhill. It's not good. But that, again, I record that Sunday evenings. It goes up Monday, so I can be much like right now, your companion on your way to work as you end the weekend. Speaking of ending the weekend.
Nice. I like your sound effect there. That's good. All right, folks. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful TV party for The Idol. He's Robert Winfree. I have to go do laundry. Be well, be safe, and behave.